So I'm here in North Uist at the beginning of June. North Uist is in the Outer Hebrides, and it's an island that lies off the west coast of Scotland, and I've been birding for a whole week here, and this video summarises the highlights of the birds that I saw. So North Uist has a range of different habitats including moorland, but it's particularly well known for its machair, which are low-lying meadows. Now these meadows come alive with flowers in the summer, and that of course brings in the insects, and in turn that brings in the birds. So come and join me on this video and see what I discover. So I drove up through Skye yesterday and it rained pretty much all the way from Oban. But this morning you can see it's a lovely day, and I'm just about to set off on the ferry from Uig, which you can see behind me, and go over to the Outer Hebrides island of Uist. And what I'm hoping to see on Uist is a great variety of birds, because there's a variety of habitats there, things like sea lochs and moors, and also machair. What I'm particularly like to see are corncrakes, but also birds of prey, things like the short-eared owls. So come and join me and see what we can find on the island. So the journey to Uist is relatively short, only a few hours. And here you get great views of Skye as you leave it. And then nice views as you approach Uist. So I was excited to get to Uist. It's a place I wanted to visit for some time. It's an island that's intersected with these sea lochs that you can see here, and also has moorland, which is an uphill habitat for birds like curlews. But what's special about Uist and the other Hebridean islands is the machair, which are these meadows that are non-intensively cultivated and just lie inland from the sea, and is a great habitat for a variety of ground nesting birds. So one bird in the machair you can't really avoid is the skylark. They're singing all the time. They've got this classic flight where they go up and then parachute back down again. But another bird that you'll see really commonly is the meadow pipit, and you can see this one here with its beak full of caterpillars ready to feed its young. Machair is important for ground nesting birds and very common in Uist as the oystercatcher. They have very large numbers and they form large flocks. As well as the oystercatcher, another ground nesting bird is the redshank. And these are found in the machair, and they're also found in the moorland. And as you're walking through the machair, you'll hear these alarm calls going all the time, both from the ground and also from convenient posts. Another ground nesting bird is the lapwing. And the lapwing, like the redshanks and the oystercatchers, have a resident population, but there's also a flux of migratory birds as well. And as you're walking through the machair at this time of year, which is the beginning of June, then you can hear alarm calls going all the time. And of course it's the parents protecting their chicks, like this little lapwing that you can see here. And here's an even smaller one. In the background you can hear the dawn chorus that I recorded at the Balranald RSPB Reserve. It really was fantastic to be there. Now in amongst the birds you can hear, there are also corncrakes. However, try as I might, I really couldn't see them. I think I was about 2 weeks too late, and the vegetation had grown too much to be able to spot them. Now Uist is a very important area for breeding oystercatchers. You can see them on the beaches and on the machair. And while I was there, I found an enormous flock of about 50 or so birds. So my next stop after the machair was to go back onto the moorland to try and find the short-eared owls. I'd been recommended a spot on Committee Road, both by local guides and also in the guidebook, as a particular hotspot for raptors. And indeed, this time while I was there, I did see a short-eared owl just sitting in the heather. Now, as well as short-eared owls, it's also a habitat for redshank. So redshank are found not only in the machair, but also up here on the moorland. But there were other raptors, and I was particularly excited to find a hen harrier. And here I got pretty good views of a male hen harrier hunting. So these birds are quite rare on the mainland, but you do see them on the Hebrides. So recently I just bought this thermal imager. I was hoping I would be able to use it to identify corncrakes. And although I could hear them calling in front of me, it wasn't useful. I couldn't see the thermal signature of them, presumably because they're so deeply hidden. There's no line of sight, and so you can't see the heat coming off them. Nevertheless, it was extremely useful yesterday. I was looking for short-eared owls, and I scanned and scanned on the horizon with my binoculars and couldn't see any. But using this, then I could see a thermal signature. And once I'd identified where that was, then I could use my binoculars and I could see that it was an owl that was sitting there. And I think I got some good pictures. Here's the picture of the owl. I'm pretty happy with it. As well as the owls, the other characteristic birds of the moorland include curlews. Now you hear the curlews calling in the background almost all the time, and often they are flying, but here I managed to catch one just in the grass. In the bushier areas of the moorland, you can also see stonechats, and typically birds like this male here will go to tops of branches and start calling. Early in the morning I saw lots of red deer, and this is in June, so it's early in the season, and you can see this one is just growing its antlers. Committee Road lived up to its reputation for raptors, and as well as the owls I also saw buzzards and white-tailed sea eagles. These were reintroduced into the Hebrides in 1974, and now there are over 150 breeding pairs across the islands. One of the characteristics of some of the more exposed beaches is that they wash up huge areas of seaweed, and that brings in these birds. So here you can see black-headed gulls and also common gulls, and also I think there's a black-backed gull in there as well. There he is. So you end up with quite a mixed flock of these gulls. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting was a behaviour that I've heard about but haven't seen, and that's where these black-headed gulls are actually pecking at the surface of the water and kind of essentially hovering. It's really nice to see them. And on the sandy beaches, it's common to see Dunlins, which breed here. As well as Dunlin, there were also Sanderling. Sanderling are amazing birds. They migrate all the way up from South Africa up to the Arctic. And here in Uist, they're just stopping by. They really are very, very small, and you can see how tiny they are compared to that oystercatcher, which isn't a big bird. So another thing you can do on Uist is actually go on a wildlife cruise. So these are the lady and wildlife cruises, and they go to various locations, but when we were there the weather was pretty bad, and so they stayed fairly close to the mainland. Nevertheless, we saw both red and black-throated divers, and the highlight of the show were really close encounters with these white-tailed eagles. After spending some time around the seashore, I went back up onto the moors to see if I could track down those short-eared owls. And off he goes over the hill again. So I'm on Committee Road in North Uist, and this is a hotspot for raptors, and it's actually been the best place that I've found for short-eared owls. So I'm essentially hiding behind the car and just taking pictures of it. And I was here yesterday morning and got some reasonable pictures. See what I can do today. But this is obviously part of its territory, and I can see a whole slope of moorland in front of me. So I'll just keep going. It's only 6 o'clock in the morning, so the light is pretty good today. And so, yeah, let's just see what kind of pictures I can get. The short-eared owls are much more active on this day. The short-eared owls are residents to Uist. They're ground nesting and, believe it or not, have between 1 and 11 eggs. Now, typically what you see as you're driving along is just this flight pattern with this kind of lovely buoyant flying. Now, the area where I stopped on Committee Road, I'm pretty sure that the bird had a young one fairly close by. So I could see that because it was pretty protective, and here you can see it attacking a buzzard. Came close. It repeatedly dive bombs him. So the bird seemed to have a territory and be going round and round. And would quite often go down, it would hover and then go down on something. But usually that didn't work out. But I did manage to get a sequence where he did catch something, probably a little vole. So there he goes down. Comes back up with something in his claws. And what's really interesting is it just went over the side of the bushes and obviously dropped this vole off, because then it took off again without the vole. So presumably it was feeding its youngster. So this is the end of my time on North Uist. It's another sunny day, so we've had 2 in a row, which is amazing. We have had some bad weather. I think the locals might think it's not so bad, but actually the wind was bitterly cold on some of the days. I had a really good time. I've seen lots of birds, particularly down the machair in the RSPB Reserve of Balranald. Really was an eye-opener how many birds they have down there, and particularly in the early mornings. When I was getting up, I could see lots of the chicks running around, so hopefully I got some good pictures. But as I said, I really wanted to see the short-eared owls. I've seen them before, but never really good views. And so I've had some really fantastic views of them. I'm not sure what the photos will look like, but we'll see. So I hope you've enjoyed being with me. It's certainly been a fantastic time for me. And I'll see you again next time. Well, of course, when you go to these kind of islands, you're also looking out for otters. And I spent many hours sitting in the rain, as you can see here. Orange plastic bag over my camera to try and protect it, trying to stake out these otters. After hours and hours then I was successful, and I actually saw this little loch which had 3 otters on it. So it's actually a mother and 2 cubs. So all in all, I did have a fabulous time, my time in Uist.